Rawson21 here, and I was sitting one day thinking, where do certain inappropriate words come from? Like, where does punk come from? Where does jerk come from? Where does idiot come from? Like, where did these words start? How did they start? When did they start? Well, after doing some research, I found out, and I decided I want to share these words with the world because I felt like I wasn't the only one that was interested in knowing where these words come from. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into knowing where these words came from and how they started. Number 1, punk. Punk has had a long career in an insult of English language. Shakespeare used it, especially a dirty word, for prostitutes in 1602. Eventually, it came to mean young male prostitutes. In the 1920s, it became known as people, particularly those paired up with seasoned railroad bums. Someone who is young and inexperienced. Inexperience soon translated to a good-for-nothing criminal. Or they would call a good-for-nothing criminal a punk. Number 2, a brat. We've all been called a brat one time in our life, or we've called someone a brat, most likely when we were kids. In the 1500s in England, a brat was a really poor kid, and they usually were begging for money or for food or for candy. This was very annoying to people who were walking up and down the streets trying to get to one place or another. A brat is also an Old English word meaning ragged garment or a cloak. So brats often wore brats, affirming that they were in fact brats. Number 3, a jerk. Steam engines were awesome, way better than sailing, especially if you had to go from New York to California. But since they ran on steam, they needed to be refilled with water ridiculously often. Water stops were built all along the railroad lines. These were just water towers with hanging chains that the boiler man would jerk to start the water flowing. Towns sprang up around many of these water stops. Some thrived and some were just jerk water towns, populated with jerks. The boiler man that would jerk the hanging chain was usually rude, inconsiderate, probably because they were living in small towns where nothing happened. This is probably why many people that are rude, inconsiderate, hateful, usually are called jerks. Usually that's why people say you're acting like a jerk. Number 4, dunce. John Dunce, 15th century philosopher, had some brilliant things to say. He pioneered the idea that we had the exact same kind of goodness inside of us that God did, just a little less. Unfortunately, his followers, known as the Dunces, succeeding his death, were said to be the most stubborn, closed-minded, hair-splitting philosophers ever to exist. John Dunce's name would go down in history attached more to his pig-headed followers than to his work. Number 5, a bum.
That's what he is, a bum.
And we owe this great word to German immigrants coming to America in the 1860s. The introduction of the word bum to mean useless was meant for the longest time as buttocks. But during the American Civil War, German Americans were the largest ethnic to fight for the Union in the American Civil War. More than 200,000 native Germans served in the Union Army, notably from New York, Wisconsin, and Ohio. However, there were some soldiers that were just lazy, and the Germans referred to them as bumlers. This word was shortened to just bum, to apply to any soldier not worth his rank, because he was just sitting around on his bum all day. Bunghole or Bungholio.
I am Cornholio. I need picata for my bunghole. Are you threatening me? My bunghole will not wait.
Honestly, this word was actually a full, legitimate, good word back in the 1600s, but over the years, people just started using it as a dirty word more and more. Basically, a bung is a cork or a plug. A bunghole is something that needs to be stopped by a cork, like a wine barrel or a milk jug. You are still surrounded by legitimate bungholes in your everyday modern life. You probably just don't know it. Number 7, an idiot.
You idiot!
Now, for some reason, This word, the origins of it, is my favorite, probably because it has to do with ancient Greece, and I like a lot of ancient Greece stories, and since idiot comes from ancient Greece, probably why it's my favorite. In ancient Athens, contributing to the politics and society in general was considered the norm and highly desirable, originating from the word eidos, which means the self. If you did not demonstrate social responsibility and political awareness, you were considered apathetic and uneducated and ignorant. Most importantly, it is worth noting that ancient Greeks valued political participation and collective governance, a completely different state of mind from what we see in most societies today, where most societies today demonstrate empathy, feelings, not being offended to what happens around them. Are most of us turning into full-time idiots? You decide. I'm Rawson21. Thank you for tuning in to this video, and I will be back with another one, and I'll see you again.